So if you're a remote sales pro, this is going to be one of the more controversial, one of the more psychologically intense videos that I've ever made on remote sales. And some of the things we're going to get into here, I probably wouldn't say you should use these as communication strategies just in life, because they border on, I think, unethical if used for the wrong reasons. But the reason I wanted to bring up this topic, which is going to be compliance, it's going to be framing on your sales calls, is because I realized how hard remote sales actually is, how hard high ticket sales in general is. It's not one of the hardest things in the entire world you could do. I think going to like medical school and doing 8 years of that is potentially harder, definitely harder. I think being a professional athlete in most disciplines at the highest levels, I think, is also being harder, being more difficult. But remote sales isn't a walk in the park, and a lot of people here on YouTube teach it like it is. And what I want to do is bring genuine authenticity and teach you how to understand how to perform as good as you can in remote sales at an elite level so you can make a bunch of money and give yourself a bunch of freedom. And in order to do that, you need tools. You need tools and skill sets, tools in your toolbox that are going to allow you to have the freedom that you want. And one of those tools is understanding compliance, understanding framing it. It's something that I use a lot. It's something that changed my sales game entirely. I train our sales reps on this. In the people that I work with, the business owners I work with, the sales reps that I train personally, I teach them this as well, and I'm going to give it to you here. So we're going to have a deep dive in compliance and framing. The first thing that I want to start with here and that you need to understand is that dialogue is a very important part of sales calls. Okay, if you're getting on and you're selling 10K, 15K, 20K services, whatever it was. And for me, I was selling 20K dating coaching services. So I've been through the ringer. I understand how difficult it is. And I was getting cooked when I first started selling. And then I eventually got way, way better, worked with mentors, coaches, and dialed in my ability to lead, handle objections, ended up making a bunch of money. My highest earning month being 18K, a little over 18K in February of 2024. And one thing that I realized in this journey is that compliance and framing is such an important part of the game of sales. When you're on a sales call and you're talking to someone 45 minutes to an hour and your goal is to take their money, that call has to be framed in the most optimal way for them to make a buying decision, okay? Which means that the conversation that you need to be having with them shouldn't be a conversation where you're just hanging out, we're just keeping it chill, we're just having a good time. We're asking some discovery questions and going into some problems. There needs to be a conversation that is framed in such a way that the prospect feels, I need to do this. I have to take action to buy. And that's what we're going to train on here. So compliance and framing allows that to happen. Now, I want you to understand the importance of dialogue. Dialogue means that on a sales call, you don't just want answers. Okay, when I run my sales calls, I'm not looking for answers from people. Answers meaning a yes or a no. I'm not looking for that. What I'm looking for is conversation that's leading to a certain outcome. So yes, on one hand, sales is just having a conversation. I know some sales pros will teach you this. They'll say, just have a conversation, keep it natural. It's easy to be natural. To an extent, sure. Yes, you want to have a natural flowing conversation with someone. But on the other hand, you're having a conversation with the intent to have a very specific outcome. You're not having a conversation innocently. When I talk to people and I close them on whatever offer I'm ripping on, or our sales reps, and when I train someone and they're closing on an offer, and we have guys that are doing 20K plus in commissions right now, what I'm doing is I'm not training our guys to just have a conversation that's like a nice dialogue. I'm training them to have an intention behind a conversation that seems innocent and open-ended, but we're actually causing it to go somewhere, which relies a lot on influence, it relies a lot on control, it relies a lot on leadership, right? Which are things that are very intense to learn and can be very challenging if you're not mentally or energetically prepared to dive into those things. And by the fact you're watching this video, I'm sure that you are. So the two things we're going to look at today are compliance and framing, and I'll explain both of those. Compliance, it's very simple what they mean, and I'll give you training that's going to back these two ideas. So compliance means getting the prospect to agree to a certain line of thinking or a certain path. That's what compliance means, okay? Compliance is like, a good example of this would be, you ask them, are you the kind of person who wants to make changes in your life and give a better life to your family? And they say yes, like, yes, I really want to. And you say, why? That's an example of compliance, okay? And a lot of sales reps do a terrible, terrible job of this, okay? Most sales reps are very, very bad at getting compliance, because what most sales reps think, and this is going to be what we're going to talk about here in this video. We're going to go deep on it. Trust me, we're going to go real deep. What most sales reps think is that if I get someone to say yes to something, the person just saying yes means I've gotten the compliance. But that isn't real compliance. It sounds like compliance because they said yes, but all they did was just make a fucking statement. Like they just said yes. That doesn't have any value. The better value is dialogue. Dialogue means where they don't just say yes, but they talk about and explain the compliance, and they explain the perspective that they're operating on under the call. And a lot of sales reps, what I've seen they do is they operate their calls, they run their calls with no compliance or very minimal compliance, where the prospect is playing ball and the prospect is going down a path, sure, but there isn't a strong, high level of compliance where the prospect is actually bought in to the path that the sales rep is creating. So compliance is number one. I'm going to tell you how to create compliance and do it the right way. The second one is framing. Framing means where we put the prospect in a position where they self-admit that they need something, or that they have some kind of problem, or that they want change. It's a little different than compliance. Compliance is the prospect saying, yes, let's go down this path, let's have this conversation, let's do this thing. Okay, that's compliance. Framing is the prospect speaking about a situation that they're in life, or a place that they would like to get to, and admitting or owning that this is the actual situation they're in, right? So let's say weight loss, like fitness offer. Let's say you're closing on some kind of fitness offer, and you get a prospect who is talking about how they're doing pretty well right now. They just need a couple of changes, like very small changes in their life. And they're saying everything is going pretty well. I'm in a good place. That's an example of poor framing. If we allow that to go, the frame has now not been set that they're in a problematic state and they really need help. We need to set that frame, because the frame of, I have a problem, I need that problem to be fixed. If it isn't fixed, it's not good for me and I won't be in a good place. That frame is what's going to allow you to close the person. Right? And if that frame is not created early in the call, the sale is going to be way harder to get, because they're not going to be operating under that frame. Makes sense? So we have compliance and then we have framing. Okay, let's dive into all the technique and let's go deep. So the first thing you have to understand, we have to set some ground rules if you're going to be framing things correctly, if you're going to be getting compliance. The first ground rule is, when I ask questions on a sales call, I'm not asking questions for the sake of it to ask them because it's part of a script. Okay, that's the first thing you need to understand. We don't ask questions just to ask them. So I'm not asking my prospect questions like when I say, how do you feel about something? I'm not asking the questions just for the sake of it. I'm asking questions to the prospect because I want them to follow a certain path and give me a specific answer. So my questions are not innocent. As an example, one of the questions that we use in our scripting is, what are the challenges you're facing now that are preventing you from getting to XYZ result? Like, what's holding you back from, let's say, losing the weight? What's holding you back from losing the weight? I'm not asking that question just like innocently, like, hey, let's have a conversation around what's holding you back. I'm asking that question because I want the prospect to self-admit some sort of problem or some sort of limiting factor that is stopping them from being where they need to be. Make sense? So I'm not asking these questions innocently. It's very important as a sales rep that you know the answers that you want to get. And this is where a lot of sales reps mess up. And something we do when we train is I all the time tell my guys, I'm like, know the answers that you want to get, know the answers that you want behind your calls, because if you know those answers, if you know what you're trying to get, if you're like, I know very, very specifically what direction I want to take this call, you're going to be able to adjust on the front end and ask the right kind of questions that are easily going to get you into that position later in the call, which is what a lot of sales reps don't do. By the way, quick thing, if you want to learn more about compliance and framing, we have a newsletter. We just launched it. It's like mind-blowing shit, where I basically give away my in-depth trainings, like my scripting, role plays, live trainings, all this, like recordings of them. You can even come hit and train with me live for free. We do trainings regularly. All of that you get on my newsletter. It's called the Protocols Newsletter. The link is down below. It's completely free to join. Click the button. It takes you to our site. You opt in, put your email in, and we're going to start sending you value just right to your inbox. Like some psycho stuff, some crazy stuff that no one in remote sales talks about, because everyone's trying to sell you on the idea of making money instead of actually training you on how to actually make money. So we're going to give you everything you need on this newsletter. So I'd say down below, just put your name and email in, and it's going to change your life. Like it's the best newsletter for sales, for high ticket sales, specifically remote high ticket sales in the space. The link is down below. Let's continue training. So what I'm doing on a call, when I know the answers that I want, what I'm doing when it comes to compliance, when it comes to framing, is I'm not trying to change how someone thinks. And a lot of sales pros don't understand this. They think that a sales call, when you're framing or when you're handling objections or when you're leading, they think that it comes down to trying to change how someone thinks and getting them to like literally believe something different. But I'm not trying to do that. All I'm trying to do, stick with me here because this is very important. If you take notes on anything in this call, and this is some like training level content, high level content here that I'm gonna give you right now. If you care about anything on the call, it's not about trying to change the way someone thinks, because that's really not what you can do, and I'll explain why in a second. What you're trying to do is get them to act in line with the action taking or the committed version of themselves. That's what you're trying to do. So on a call, I'm not trying to change the way someone thinks entirely. It's just too difficult. What I'm trying to do is get them to act and take actions in line with being an action taker or being committed to being a better version of themselves. Does that make sense? So it's not like, and the reason why I'm not trying to change how the person thinks is because it's too difficult to. You're not their therapist, you're not their coach. Changing someone's belief systems takes months. Changing someone's belief systems takes you going through a process with them and getting them to an altered state of consciousness where they then operate from and then change their lives, right? You can't do that in 45 minutes. That's not going to happen. You can't do that in an hour-long call. So you shouldn't even try to. It's just not a good use of your time. It's not a good model. I'm not trying to coach on my sales calls. What I am trying to do is change the way the person is operating on the call and get them to operate under a new set of rules just for that hour. Some people, this is really easy, right? Because let's say that you get someone who's a crazy action taker in life. They're used to investing in themselves. They just understand the game. They have very little fear, very little hesitation. Well, boom, there we go. Your job is half done because they've done that within themselves. But a lot of prospects, specifically on offers like fitness, maybe dating offers, even a lot of biz ops like ecomm type stuff. I know some of y'all are closing on like sales biz ops where they say, hey, you make 10K per month with remote sales. Look at me, I'm like skiing. And I made 5K in 2 weeks, which is not a lot of money actually, but I made 5K in 2 weeks as a remote sales pro. Like some of y'all are closing on offers like that too. But anyway, whatever the offer is that you're closing on, what you're trying to do is get the person to operate on that call in line with someone who would take action or someone who would commit to a better future. You're not trying to get them to think and change their belief systems, not have fear. Like, dude, you're not trying to handle someone's fear permanently on a sales call. You can't do that. It's just too short. All you're doing is saying, hey, let's let go of the rules that you've been operating under just for this call, and let's go with a new set of rules based on who you want to be and the life that you want to create for yourself, or the way that you want to run your business, right? Or the way that you want to have your health, or the way that you want to make your money in your e-com brand, whatever it be. Let's operate under those rules. So like, what would that woman do? What would that guy do? There we go, framing and compliance. That's why they're important now. You see what I mean? Because if you're not getting a lot of compliance, if you're not framing things correctly earlier in the call, the set of rules that the prospect is going to operate under are going to fall very, very short of what rules they would need to follow in order to make a buying decision where they're paying 5K for something. Because dropping 5K for a fitness program is not easy for most people, just mentally paying 5K for dating, 5K for fitness, e-com, whatever the fuck it is. Even if you're a business owner, investing 15K in an agency requires some level of mental overhaul, not for everyone, but for a lot of people to get to the point where they would do that. It's a little scary, right? So what we're doing on a sales call, I want to make sure you understand this because I'm going to give you a lot of training on it, but we have to establish this baseline first. What I'm not trying to do is trying to change their thought processes. I'm not like trying to convince them that the world works a certain way. All I'm doing is saying on the call, I just need you to act in a way and act according to a certain system that is going to get you where you need to be in the future, even if you may not see it now. And for that, we need them to comply with the paths that we set out and the questions we ask and the directions we create, which I will give you right now. And then we need to frame things in such a way that their response is them owning their own pain. They're owning up to their pain, saying, yes, I am frustrated, I do have a problem. And they're owning their urgency, saying, I need to fix this now. And they're owning their gaps. Here's where I want to be versus where I am now. There's a gap between those two things. That's what we need on a sales call. Okay, now, how do we actually do this? I'm going to give you three things, three pieces of sauce, three pieces of value pillars that are going to change the entire game for you. And if you apply them, I promise you, this will make you money. This is why I am really, really good at sales. And I want to give you some context. My background is dating coaching. So a lot of people like see my stuff and they're like, dude, how did you get good fast? Because I haven't been a remote closer for like fucking 5 years. I got into closing in 2023 and I went from absolute trash to being really good in about 4 months. And I trust me, I was really trash, but I was a dating coach before and I was coaching dudes like very high level advanced dating skills, mindset stuff, managing relationships with high quality women. I was training guys on this for like 5-6 years. At the beginning of that, I wasn't a great coach, but then I got better and learned more as I progressed and worked with more clients. So I was teaching dudes like all over the world and running like masterminds and these in-person boot camps and some crazy shit. So I learned all that with the ladies first and how to properly date and build relationships. And then I got into sales and was like, how do I sell? And then I got a mentor and I was like, oh, I see how it works. And then I combined everything and And I was like, oh, okay, now I'm really good. That's my journey, right? So that's how I went from terrible to making like 15K plus 18K a month within 4 months. So here's what I'm gonna give you. Number one, in order to create compliance, and frame things the right way, you have to create crossroads questions. You have to leverage and use crossroads questions. What are crossroads questions? Okay, stick with me here. This is going to be dense. It's not going to be simple. Well, it's simple, but it's not easy. Crossroads questions essentially it's an open-ended dialogue where the prospect picks and chooses who they want to be. Not necessarily a dialogue always, but it's a question where the prospect picks and the prospect chooses who they want to be. And having the prospect interact with, I'm not even going to say answer, having them interact with the question in such a way where they pick the right option, the option that is in line with them making a buying decision, is how you're going to close more people. Crossroads questions are very, very important. A crossroads question, again, is like, imagine instead of you saying to someone, do you like, I'll give you a simple example and then we'll put it into a sales call and I'll kind of do a little bit of scripting with you here. Imagine you saying to someone, do you want an apple, yes or no? Okay, and the person says, yes, I want the apple. That was okay, but that wasn't a crossroads. They picked, yes, I would like the apple, but it's because you only gave them the decision of yes or no based on one path that you created, which was apple. Okay, here's an example of me changing that question into a crossroads. Watch how I do it. Don't let this overwhelm you. Stick with me, lock in. Okay, this is gonna make you money. Here's a better example, an example of a crossroads. Yeah, brother, the way I see it, I mean, there's two kinds of options for you in life. You have oranges and you have apples. The thing with oranges is like they are a fruit and they are sweet, but they're just you don't know what you're going to get with an orange just because the way the fruit is made, literally the freaking biological mechanisms that go into that fruit. You don't know what you're getting with an orange. It's very citrusy. It's really not for everyone, and you just never know what you're getting with an apple. On the other hand, you know the apple's going to be solid. You know it's going to be crispy, especially if it's fresh, which a lot of our apples are, of course. You know that it's going to be an amazing experience just biting into the apple and experiencing that, as they would call it, the original fruit, right? That's why in school when they show you the picture of a fruit, what's the fruit? It's going to be an apple, right? So I guess the question for you would be, are you the kind of guy who like wants apples? Or are you the kind of guy who wants to settle for oranges? Like, who would you be? Crossroads, right? I didn't ask, do you want the orange, yes or no? Or do you want the apple, yes or no? Because that has less value for the sales conversation versus if I just present both crossroads paths, as in there's path one and path two, I present them and lay them out. I make one sound freaking terrible and the other one sound really good, but I mask it over. I don't do it obviously like an idiot. I didn't mean it that way, but okay, you can't do it like an idiot. You got to be smart about this, where people will see through it. Modern buyers are very aware. You can't do this like old school scream at people sales, like some people on YouTube do. Instead, you have to do it like smooth and conversationally, right? The way I did. And then you get them to pick a path. So they'll have a dialogue. You're like, yeah, when I think about an apple, that's really the kind of fruit I want to have. And I want to have that fruit for myself. I want to have that fruit for my family. Now, the path they picked is going to have more weight to it, and you've created more compliance, you set the right frame, because they're operating under the conditioning of that path on the call. Does it make sense? It's really cool. So I'll give you a sales example. Let's use, we have an example I like to use a lot is like busyness, like someone who's super busy and not able to take action, right? So let's say you're doing a fitness offer. Let's say use Fitness Biz Up, okay? Some guy is working in the gym. He's got a kid and a wife, and he wants to get out of the gym and he wants to go online with his business. He wants to stop being an in-person trainer. He wants to go online so he can spend more time with his family, etc. He wants to like make an online course, get online clients, right? And that's what your company does. He pays 7.5K and you guys help him go fully online, right? How would we present this path? Let's say that we're in discovery and you ask the guy, you're like, so tell me, what's been holding you back? And he's like, I'm so busy nowadays because we just had the baby. The baby is a year old, and I just help the wife out taking care of her, so I really have no time to work on my online business. Boom, we have to reframe that. We cannot let that happen, because if he says the reason I can't get results is because I am busy, That's not something we can solve as a company. What does that mean? If he's like, I'm too busy to get results, I mean, how are we gonna help him with that? If he's just busy, we're not a time management coaching company. He needs something else. He needs to say, I don't know how it works, how to make videos. I don't know how to do marketing. I'm scared. That's cool too. We're good with that. I've tried ads and my ads got shut down. Our sales process sucks. I could help him then, right? Or like I don't know what to offer people. I don't know how to build an online program. All of that our company could help with. But if he's like, I'm busy, yeah, I don't want to have that conversation with him because that's not a perfect fit for what our offer is. We're not a time management company. So what I need to do is I need him to concede. This is where we go into, remember I told you earlier, that's why I said I have to start with these principles first for you to get this. Remember earlier I mentioned that you have to know the answers that you want to get. You can't just go from I'm asking questions blindly for the fucking sake of it, and then I'm going to go try to get certain answers. After I ask the questions, you need to know the answer ahead of time that you want and ask questions that are going to get you there. So what answer do I want here? I need him to get off of the busy thing, because if he sticks with busyness, I can't help him. He wouldn't buy our program because it wouldn't make sense. If he thinks that the answer is busy, that he's not busy, or he's too busy, excuse me. I'm all over the place. If he thinks he's too busy, we can't help him. What I need is for him to concede and for him to agree that he is not too busy and it has to be something else. That he has the time and he's just not doing what he's supposed to do with the time he does have. Okay? So how do we get him to concede this? What I could do, the lame way that like basic sales reps are going to do, I don't know, people who have trained in like very basic sales training programs from YouTubers that I won't name right now. But a basic sales rep who's very untrained will do this. They'll say, well, first they probably wouldn't even notice the mistake or the error. They wouldn't notice the frame. But if they did, they would just go, yeah, so I mean, are you in a situation where you want to make time for this? What will he say? He'll say, yes, I really want to. They're like, yeah, I got the compliance. The framing was set. No, it wasn't. The framing was not set. Here's how you set the frame. Dialogue around two possible paths. Here's how it would sound. I hear you, John, in terms of the busyness. You know what's interesting, though? There's a lot of guys that I know, and not even people that are our clients only, but just people I know who are busy, who have families, who are doing a lot and taking a lot of responsibility. One of our guys, Chris, he actually has two daughters, and he's a single dad, and working a 9 to 5, and he built his online business while doing that. Now he has a whole bunch more freedom. So, I mean, it is possible. You know what I mean? I guess the question I would ask you, after you know what I mean, I'd pause, let him kind of wrestle with it. He may not say yes, but he'd wrestle with it. He'd be like, I don't know. I see what you mean. He'd concede it. You know, I win that point now. He hasn't agreed fully, but he's there. Then I'll continue. The question I would have for you, John, is like, there's really two paths in life. Are you the person who can only build a better life for his family when everything is like peaches and cream or whatever they call it, sunshine and rainbows, and you have all the time in the world to just do that all the time in the world? Or are you the kind of person who, like, even when life is busy and things are chaotic, you may not have 5 hours a day? I don't think you'd have that, of course. You're a busy man. You got a family to provide for. You've got life. But with the time you do have, an hour a day, 2 hours a day on the weekends maybe, are you the kind of person who wants to build a better life for his family even while being like a busy man who just has life responsibilities? Or does the busyness mean they don't deserve that and you can't build that? Because that's important for where we go from here, brother. His answer is going to be, no, I definitely want to give them that life. He'll elaborate on it, and I'll say, and why do they deserve that even while you're like so busy as a person, though? Because you are busy. Then he'll justify why his family deserves it and why he can be this kind of person even while busy. And then I'll re-ask the question, great, man. So, I mean, you have the time. It's not easy, but you have the time. So with the time that you do have right now, what really is making it so difficult for you to go online and build this thing? What's the hardest challenge that you're facing? What's difficult about it for you, brother? Boom, perfect framing. He's admitted that he is able to do this even while being a busy person, and now we have him in a good place, right? That's framing. If you would have just said, do you want to do this while busy? And he said, yes, you didn't get the compliance, you didn't get the frame. The compliance and framing happens when the prospect has a dialogue and invests in the pathway that you create. That's what happens when they invest in the pathway you create. And the only way they're going to invest in that pathway is through dialogue. It's through conversation. It's through them verbally admitting and stating, yes, I would like to be this person. Yes, you are correct. And here is why. That is compliance. That is framing. Point number two. I want you to start using open-ended statements. This is how we create dialogue, right? So what I like to do when I'm selling, and I'm going to start sharing more of my calls, and I've actually already been putting them out on the newsletter. You can see my calls because I put out live calls that I've done, live calls I'm doing for B2B and B2C sales. I'm telling you, you're missing out if you're not on our newsletter. You're actually genuinely missing out, and I feel bad for you if you're not on the newsletter. I'm going to try to handle your objections to joining the newsletter through the screen right now. I can't do that because there's no dialogue, all right? But join the newsletter. You're actually crazy if you don't. The link is down below. So what we're doing is, what I do on my calls, and I teach all my guys to do this, this is why our sales reps are some of the best performing in the industry, is we're using open-ended statements to create dialogue. I love doing this. So I don't just like asking closed questions that are like a hard yes or no. I almost like to let my statements trail off. Again, I'm going to show you how I do it. It's a verbal technique you can use. I don't like to assume and just close the thread. I don't like to just do that. So I'll give you an example, right? Let's say fitness software. This is the scripting I wrote here. I thought it would be a good example. Let's say you're selling fitness, right? And someone says, I haven't been at the weight that I wanted. I haven't been at the confidence that I wanted for the last, I don't know, give me some random time, like the last 5 years, okay? And you want to elaborate on that without just saying, this is what you should do. You don't want to just say, I can't imagine that it's been good. Has it? And then they say no. And then maybe they say one or two sentences. I want instead to create a dialogue and a conversation around it, right? So here's how I would script that normally. It's hard to do it when I'm not dialoguing with a person, but I wrote down an example of how it would sound. Here's how it sounds. So like, I'm role playing it now. So dealing with that feeling, Jenny, I guess, like, you know, the lack of confidence and just not being it the way you want to be, and having been in this position for 5 years, or even it seems like it was a little bit more, but around 5 years, like, I can't imagine that this has been ideal for you, or how has it been? There we go. So instead of me saying, I can't imagine that's been great, has it? Which closes the thread and now makes it a yes or no, because I want more investment and compliance. I want more framing on her problem state, so there's no avoidance, and she's actually owning it, and she's investing in the problem state through her words. What I'm going to do is I'm going to open up a dialogue around it. And the way you open up a dialogue around it, imagine you're talking to a friend, and your friend's having a bad relationship, and you're like helping him get out of the relationship. Some, I don't know, some toxic lady, okay, is dating your friend, and you're like, this guy needs to get out of it, and you're sitting having a drink with him, and he's talking about how sad he is and how things are all depressing, right? What are you going to do to help your friend? You're not going to just tell him. You're not going to be like, yeah, bro, I know that your relationship has been tough. Hasn't it been? No, instead you're going to have your drink and you're going to say, yeah, dude, I could imagine it's been so tough, dude. I can't even imagine. And you're going to trail off, and your buddy is going to communicate with you. He's going to catch up with you. He's going to talk to you and invest in the thing you just said. So in sales, going back to why I said this session is kind of diabolical, and I think can be unethical if you're using it the wrong way, I'm teaching you how to appear like you're having natural conversations where they're not actually natural, where there's an actual intention behind it, right? So that's what I'll do all the time. I'm interacting with my prospects in a way that sounds natural, it sounds conversational, and yes, it feels that way, but there's a deep intention behind it, and I'm framing and forcing certain ideas, certain threads, certain paths. This is an example of it, right? An open-ended dialogue, okay? And the third thing I wrote down, third part of my notes, is doing your due diligence. And this is so powerful. This is what I do with my people all the time. You don't want to jump into assumptions. A lot of sales pros make this mistake. I just invested in a sales training program. Excuse me, not a sales training program. I just invested in a fitness training program because I want to get bigger, put on some weight. You know, I need to pack on some size. I want to gain like 5 kilos by summer, maybe even 10. 10 is a little hard, but minimum 5 kilos. And I invested in this program from I won't say its name, but a pretty popular fitness influencer online. Hint, hint, he specializes in diet and being like superhuman. That's kind of what he specializes in. Wink. Maybe you know what I'm talking about. So I hopped on a call with his team, and this dude, good guy, good vibes, was doing his job. But you could just tell he did not know, like, he was not performing in sales at an elite level. I still bought because the program was super cheap. I thought it was going to be like 6, 7K or something. It was significantly lower than that. But on the call, he asked me, what was one of the questions he said? And I recorded it, so I'll make a video breaking down the call. He asked me on the call, he was like, what did this guy say to me? He said, so for you, like being in that position where you have gained weight and you feel great, it would be amazing, wouldn't it? Something like that. He was like, what would it do for you? And I said, it would be awesome. He said, it'd be fulfilling. Is that what you would call it? And I was like, yes. Right? There's no dialogue there. So what he's doing is he's creating these closed assumptions where he's just assuming it, but he's not creating a dialogue around it. That's what you call doing your due diligence, looking at everything. So if I were to ask me that on a sales call, I'd say, dude, when you've gained the weight, how'd that feel? I would answer, I'd say it feel amazing. Tell me more, like what does the amazing actually look like day to day in your life as a guy who's packing on weight and who's bigger? What changes just in terms of how you interact with the world? Tell me more about that. Now we create dialogue, right? So I'm doing my due diligence. I want you to understand this principle, and I'll leave you with this. If the prospect says it, it has more value. Okay, so if the prospect invests in it, if the prospect dialogues on it, if the prospect talks about it, if the prospect goes into it, it has more value, and that's what you need to understand. You shouldn't just be delivering information to the prospect or having them deliver information to you that's yes or no's, 2 sentences. It should be a dialogue. They should be talking about their situation and about their current state, the future state they want to be in, their fear state, like what they don't want to happen. That's what should be happening. This is sales, guys. This is how you're going to get better. Hey, if you've made it to the end of the video, because now you're here, there's a link below to book a call with someone on my team, with one of my guys, where it's not a sales call, it's a strategy call, where we're going to basically break down to you where you're at in sales and then look at if we can help you. It's not a sales call, it's 15 minutes. We have a no pitching policy. We have a 2-call close process, so you'll be talking to my SDR. He's freaking great, and what he's going to do is run through a process with you, basically, of like where you're at with sales, how we can help you, and then he'll offer you to come book a demo call if you're qualified for it. And if you don't feel like it's a good fit, hey, you don't have to, but we can help you, and we help people make a lot of money. I don't pitch here or sell anything here, but just if you want to work with us and you want us to help you make a bunch of money and get better at sales, that's how you can do it. The link is down below. Otherwise, if you want free shit, join the newsletter. That's great too. I'll see you on the next one. Use this, apply it, make a bunch of money. Goodbye.